These splice joints will also receive a metal strap across these joints, as you've seen earlier on the 4x8 ceiling joist. The wing sections have been completed, with the plywood spaced accordingly. Nail to manufacturer specs. Do not keep all joints at one place. Stagger these 1, 2, or 3 places when coming up through. This will give you a lot stronger and sturdy roof. When placing plywood, it is best to place a nail between the joints. This allows for any moisture expansion in the plywood trying to escape, which will keep the plywood from buckling. At the very ridge, or comb of the roof, we cut the plywood back to leave for an air space. This is called a ridge vent space. After the shingles have been put in place, this air vent hole lets the hot air and moisture escape from your attic area or the roof areas. This is cut back approximately 3/4 of an inch gap on each side of the ridge. What we're viewing here is the bottom of the ridge purlin. This has been drilled out already to receive the ceiling fan. This is helpful to do on the ground, which saves a lot of overhead work of hammering and chiseling and drilling out. By placing your spots where you need them, drill these out ahead of time. Any lights which you want to place in, but it is very helpful to do this at those places also. This is a view from the inside of the house looking up at the finished network of purlins and the skylight network which has been put together. Again, a very beautiful finished network which has been pre-stained. This will speed up the process of finishing the home and also keep the stain from getting on the finished tongue and groove white pine boards. This gable in wall that you are viewing here will be studded back 2 inches from the very outside rounded edge of the finished log. This will allow for 1.5 inch log siding plus 1/2 inch wafer board to go behind this to give a complete finished texture of the log of the complete gable end. Sometimes it's necessary on top of your felt paper to nail 2x4s down. This holds the felt paper in place until you have your shingles placed. This is showing a gable end with a wafer board already applied, the cantilevered 2x4s sticking out over. In this case it's a 2x6 to form the overhang because of the prow sticking out 4 foot at the top
taper back to 2 foot at the bottom. You'll notice the doorways already has been cut out for the round for the light junction boxes to be placed. This prow overhang forms a cathedral ceiling, which a tongue and groove has to be placed down on top of your 6x8 purlins. The corner log, which in this case is the 13th log at the top row, should be extended out to help support the fascia board. This prow overhang is cut from 4 foot back to 2 foot at the bottom, which gives an approximate 12-degree angle cut on each purlin. The top one has to be cut 2 different ways, so this forms a compound angle. On top of roofing, at night, it's always advisable to cover with a big tarp or plastic, even after your felt paper has been placed over top of your tongue and groove. Here we're seeing a build-up roof being put in place. After the tongue and groove has been put down and covered with felt paper, now we place a 2x4 insulation stop board at the bottom. This is the board which runs parallel with the face board. Off of this 2x4 are little 2x4 rafters coming down to which the face board is hooked to. Above these, 16 inches on center, are 2x6s, forming the same thickness of the roof, which is 5.5 inches, 4 inches of Thermix, 1.5 inch 2x4 laid flat. This allows for your plywood to have a nailer space to go out through. This runs continuous to the top or the ridge of the roof. At the ridge of the roof, you will notice a string has been placed. This string represents the center or the ridge of the roof to which the 2x4s will be taken later on, as we will show. By stacking 2x4s on top of each other, they can be drilled 4 foot on centers with a long bit. These will give you your pilot holes for your 10-inch pole barn nails to go down through sheeting into the purlins at the proper places. After insulation stop has been put on, which is a piece that gets nailed down on directly above the 13th row. This stops insulation from going out over the overhang. Insulation can be placed, as you are seeing here. Stagger all joints to give a good seal. After this is established, lay out for 16-inch centers. By laying out 16-inch centers, you're able to take the 2x4s, which we had laying on the sawhorses, drilled with the holes in, and establish them to the top of the peak. By running a string from one ridge center to the other center, you're able to establish the height of these 2x4s, which are actually a furring strip, to form an airspace between the plywood and the 4 inches of Thermex. These are then nailed in place with your 10-inch spikes down into the purlin. 4 foot on centers. The bottom edges are able to be established to the small 2x4 rafter extensions with 16-penny nails. Baseboards are also established at this time. After furring strips are on, this is the time when you will go back into the inside of the home if there is going to be any ceiling fans, and drill your holes completely up through the roof, run your proper wiring out through, staple along 2x4 furring strips, take down along a furring strip to an interior partition wall. This will serve for getting the juice to the, or the power to the fan or lights later on. Then you're ready to finish your roofing with your plywood, decking, felt paper, and shingles. At all valleys, they should be flashed with 24-inch wide flashing. In this particular case, you'll see we are going to weave the shingles up across the valley to give a double flash. The wing here has been finished with shingles ahead of time. This helps protect the tongue and groove ceiling, which has already been put in place ahead of time. Each row has been stepped back and counter-stepped back as we go up across. Our next step, which we will be seeing, is where the vent holes are established on the overhang. This is done by using the same 2-inch bit which we used in the beginning of the home construction to do the receptacles inside. This is a shot looking down on top of the 2-inch vent hole, which has already been placed in with a 2-inch bit. Over top of the hole, vinyl screening has been stapled fast. Tar paper has been cut out. This allows for the air to flow up between the 2x4s. Furring strips which have been placed on the roof, continuous to the top where the ridge vent will be established. Notice closely if any skylights are put in place. This is a 2x6 frame also, which is 5.5 inches high, the total thickness of the roof. Below skylights, on the 2x4 furring strips, this has been cut out to allow the air, which could be trapped between a skylight or under a skylight, to flow freely up around the side to the top. The top has been done the same. This is done by repetitious cutting out the 2x4 with a circular saw, approximately a 1/2 inch deep, leaving a channel for the air to flow out, and completely around the skylight. It is also advisable at skylights, before foam is put into place, to put caulking or a sealer around the outside perimeter down against the 1x6 or 1x8 ceiling boards, which are below. These are safety roof jacks, which we are looking at here on the roof. These are an adjustable jack which is placed when working on very steep roofs.
It gives men proper footing and place to work off of to prevent damage of shingles and falling off of the roof. Properly nail in place when using these procedures. This is what we were speaking of earlier, of a double valley flashing where the shingles are weaved in under each other at the valley. Underneath this valley has been established aluminum flashing also. Follow manufacturer's procedures for doing this step. Along the top of the ridge, this will be cut out later on, and we will show you this step after it's been cut out to receive the ridge vent. After shingles are completely finished, place venter ridge along the top of the roof. This will allow for air and moisture to be vented off of your roof area above insulation. After roof work is completely finished, now you can set your windows and doors. Remove scaffolding out of window openings. Scaffold across to do windows. This is showing a frame of 6/4 by 3.5 white pine, which has been nailed together to fit over the outside of the window. Place this over the outside of the window and scribe a pencil line along each side. By doing this, you can take a circular saw and scribe up the pencil line, and these pieces will fall out. These had been curved earlier in the video as shown before. Now, before placing frame and unit, caulk tight against the log cut and against the window jamb. Proceed by setting frame into caulking and nail fast with galvanized finish nails. Finished trimmed out window will look similar to this, with your molding recessed back in to the framework. When setting windows in place, make sure they are level across the bottom. It is advisable to shim corners slightly in each corner for leveling up. Distance on both sides should be equal, referring to between the window and the rough frame. Move window up and down to make sure that there is no binding. Small cracks between windows and frames should be filled with fiberglass insulation. Lightly packed, not too tight, or this will hinder from window sliding up and down. This is a typical interior wall partition being finished off. Exterior wall in the rough will have two 2x4s nailed tight against the outside wall. One nail staggered in every row of logs. These are a 60 deep hole nail. On any wall over 20 foot long, it should have at least one of these positioned in it to help keep wall plumb. Approximately 32 inches on center from base are nailers or blockings between. This allows for nailing of vertical triangular panels. These are not necessary if you have half-inch drywall on the interior of the home. Another site, which we will look at now, is a blocking which is placed between 4x8 ceiling joists. This consists of a 2x4 nailer to the side of each, nailed tight against the 4x8 with a nailer across the top, or a sole plate. Double plates are placed on top, continuous for bearing points for 4x8 which are placed above. These have splices in most cases above these. Blocking spacers or cats can be used to nail the other walls plumb and form an inside corner. Receptacles and switches are also laid out and dimensioned on rough walls. If blocking and cats are put in ahead of time, it'll save the electrician time of cutting around blocking. All they have to do then is drill through blocking to run their wires to the source of beam. In this case, we have used plastic boxes with the nails already in, which saves time of installation of boxes. If your home requires this type of a rafter system, bottom connections are very important to make sure they are cut in for specs of blueprint. Other joints will be put together with what we call a gusset plate, which is a steel plate which has been painted ahead of time with through bolts completely through from one side to the other and tightened up. It may take temporary bracing to hold bottom cord level until plates are put into place. Center plate or spreader 6x8 has to be shiplapped half and half. This truss we are looking at now is called a W truss. Some homes require these. Other homes require an A-truss, which is just two top rafters and a spreader between the middle, a collar tie forming an A-truss. This is called a W truss because of the webbing inside looks like a W. Octagon windows must be spaced equally all the way around, equal distance when put into openings and then trimmed out. Any extra spaces should be filled with fiberglass insulation before trim is placed. Bottom of custom rafters or trusses on conventional built roofs must have tongue and groove soffit placed on the outside with a 2-inch continuous vent, soffit vent applied underneath. This is showing one application of where strip vent, soffit vent can be placed. These are 3/4 inch, 1x6 tongue and groove white pine boards which have been placed up and underneath the soffit in this instance. We're looking at from the bottom up in against to the face board with the plywood sticking out over. Today it is raining outside, and you'll notice that the dripping off of the drip edge is actually missing the face board, which once the spouting is put in place, this will allow for the water to drip into the gutter instead of back against the face board. That is why it's very important to place plywood so it actually sticks out past the face board 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. A side shot of a window which has been trimmed out with the 6/4 trim. This is showing how the trim is actually embedded into the solid log wall. These are nailed on with galvanized nails to prevent bleeding of nails on the face also. At this time, it is not necessary to apply caulking or sealant down a long log and 4x6/4. This can be done later. If you recall earlier, it was stated on tape, 2 beads of caulking have been placed. One was placed in behind the left-hand side of this board and the right-hand side, which is tight against the window, to give you a very tight water seal and air seal behind the board. Here's a helpful hint on the corner of a scrap log piece stuck in between. This we were using for log extensions to establish for water. This is a bald eagle, finished. Appalachian stone around the base.